7 principles. That's all that stands between you and a life nobody can touch. Not 7 habits, not 7 steps, 7 weapons, forged over 2,000 years ago by people who faced things that would destroy most of us completely. War, slavery, plague, betrayal, the death of everything they loved. And yet, they didn't break. Not because their lives were easier than yours, because they had something you were never taught. Here's what nobody tells you about the modern world. You've been deliberately kept soft, comfortable, dependent. Not by accident, by design. A person who can't tolerate discomfort is a person who can be controlled by their employer, their relationships, their own fear. And right now, if you're honest with yourself, something in your life is controlling you. Maybe it's a person whose opinion you can't stop caring about. Maybe it's a financial situation that hijacks your sleep every night. Maybe it's your own mind, spinning the same anxious loops on repeat, stealing your peace, one thought at a time. Whatever it is, today is the last day it has that power over you. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't motivation. Motivation fades by Thursday. This is architecture, a structural rewiring of how you respond to everything life throws at you. 7 principles, used by slaves who became philosophers, by emperors who stayed humble, by ordinary people who built extraordinary inner lives in the middle of extraordinary chaos. Stay with me through every single one, because the one that changes your life might not be the first, it might be the 7th, and you won't know until you get there. Let me tell you about the most exhausting thing a human being can do. It isn't working 80-hour weeks. It isn't raising children alone. It isn't navigating a crisis with no support. It's trying to control things that were never yours to control. Think about the last time you felt truly, deeply stressed. Not surface level busy, but the kind of stress that sits in your chest at 3 a.m. and refuses to leave. I'll bet everything I have on this. The stress wasn't about something you could directly control. It was about what someone else might do, what people might think, what could go wrong, what might happen. You weren't reacting to reality. You were reacting to a story about reality that hadn't even happened yet. You were exhausting yourself fighting it. Epictetus built his entire philosophy around one observation so simple it almost sounds dismissive until you actually live it. Some things are in our control and some things are not. That's it. That's the whole thing. But here's where it gets surgical. Because Epictetus wasn't talking about big abstract things like the weather or the economy. He was talking about something far more personal and far more confronting. The only things truly in your control are your thoughts, your judgments, your desires, and your actions. Everything else, and I mean everything, is outside your control. Other people's behavior, their opinions of you, the outcome of your efforts, your reputation, your health, even your own body to a significant degree. None of it is yours to control, and the moment you truly accept that, not intellectually, but in your bones, something remarkable happens. The weight lifts, not because your problems disappear, but because you stop carrying problems that were never yours to carry. You stop spending mental energy on the verdict and start spending it entirely on the preparation, on the effort, on the response, on the only territory that was ever actually yours. I spent years of my life doing the opposite of this, obsessing over outcomes, rehearsing conversations that hadn't happened, lying awake constructing arguments for scenarios that never materialized, monitoring how people responded to me, adjusting, recalibrating, performing, all in service of controlling something I had zero actual power over, their perception of me. The day I genuinely internalized this principle, not read it, not agreed with it intellectually, but actually felt it shift something inside me, I got 3 hours of my day back. Not literally, but mentally. The bandwidth I had been hemorrhaging on uncontrollable outcomes suddenly became available for something useful. For doing the actual work, for showing up fully in the present, for making decisions based on my values rather than my anxiety about how those decisions would land. That shift is available to you, right now, today. But here's the part that makes this principle genuinely difficult to apply. Most people misunderstand it as passivity, as giving up, as not caring about outcomes. That's not what this is. Epictetus didn't say outcomes don't matter. He said your attachment to outcomes, your insistence on controlling what you cannot control, is the source of your suffering, not the outcomes themselves. An archer controls the draw, the breath, the release, the wind, the target, what the arrow does after it leaves the bow. None of that is the archer's domain. A Stoic archer trains obsessively, prepares completely, releases with full commitment, and then lets go. Not because they don't care where the arrow lands, but because caring about where it lands after it's already in the air changes nothing except your state of mind. And your state of mind is the most valuable real estate you own. Stop building on someone else's land. Here's your practice for this principle, and it's deceptively simple. Every time you feel stress, anxiety, or frustration rising today, stop. Ask yourself one question before you do anything else. It's what I'm reacting to inside my control or outside it. If it's inside, act immediately, decisively, without hesitation. If it's outside, release it. Not because you're weak, because spending energy on it is as rational as being angry at the rain. Do this consistently for 30 days. You will not eliminate stress from your life, but you will eliminate an enormous category of self-inflicted suffering that has been quietly draining you for years. And the energy you reclaim, directed entirely toward what you can actually change, will move your life forward faster than anything else I could tell you. That's principle one, the foundation everything else is built on. Because if you can't distinguish between what's yours and what isn't, none of the other 6 principles will stick. Next, we go deeper into the principle that separates people who merely survive difficulty from the ones who use it as fuel. The ones who don't just endure the fire, they become it. There's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. What if the worst thing that ever happened to you was also the most important thing that ever happened to you? Not despite the pain, because of it. The Stoics had a concept they called AMOR FATI, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate, not tolerance of fate, not acceptance of fate, love. And the first time most people hear that, their reaction is the same. That's easy to say when things are going well. But AMOR FATI wasn't born in comfort. It was forged by people who had lost everything. Marcus Aurelius buried multiple children while running an empire under constant threat of collapse. Epictetus developed his entire philosophy while literally owned by another human being. These men didn't love their fate because it was gentle. They loved it because they understood something most people never figure out. Resistance to what has already happened is the most irrational thing a human being can do. The event is done. It exists. It is now permanently woven into the fabric of reality. Your opinion of it changes nothing about the fact of it, but it changes everything about what it does to you. Think about a weightlifter. They don't walk into the gym and complain that the barbell is heavy. They don't resent the weight. They don't wish it were lighter. The weight is the entire point. Without resistance, there is no growth. Without friction, there is no strength. Without the thing you're fighting against, there is nothing to fight with. The obstacle isn't in the way. It is the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote exactly that. And he wasn't writing philosophy. He was writing instructions to himself for navigating a life that was genuinely, relentlessly difficult. Here's where this gets personal. I spent 2 years after a major professional failure treating it as something that had happened to me, as evidence of my limitations, as a story about why certain things weren't possible for me. 2 years of resistance, 2 years of carrying something I could have been using. The shift came when I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, what is this making possible? Same situation, completely different relationship to it, and from that different relationship, completely different outcomes. Because AMOR FATI isn't passive acceptance. It's an aggressive reorientation toward reality. It's looking at the thing that broke you and saying, I am going to use every single piece of this. The humiliation, the loss, the betrayal, the failure, the diagnosis, the ending, all of it becomes raw material. All of it becomes fuel. But only if you stop fighting the fact that it happened. Here's your practice. Think of one thing in your life right now that you've been resisting. Something you wish hadn't happened. Something you're still carrying as a wound rather than a weapon. Ask yourself honestly, what has this forced me to develop that I wouldn't have developed without it? Write it down. One thing. Just one. Because the moment you find one genuine answer to that question, the relationship changes. The weight doesn't disappear, but it starts pulling you forward instead of holding you down. That is AMOR FATI. Not pretending life is good when it isn't. Deciding that whatever life is, you will use it. Next, the principle that addresses something even more insidious than the obstacles life throws at you. The story your mind tells you about those obstacles while they're happening, and how to rewrite it in real time. I want you to try something right now. Whatever is stressing you most at this exact moment, hold it in your mind. Feel the weight of it, the urgency, the way it fills your entire field of vision. Now zoom out. You're in your room, your house, your neighborhood, your city. Keep going. Your country, your continent, the planet, a blue marble suspended in absolute darkness, spinning silently through a void so vast that the distance between stars is measured in years of light travel. And look at your problem from there. The Stoics called this practice the view from above, and Marcus Aurelius used it daily, not as an escape from his problems, but as a calibration tool, a way of resetting the lens through which he saw everything. Because here's what happens inside the human mind under pressure. Your brain cannot distinguish between a genuinely life-threatening crisis and a mildly inconvenient Tuesday. To your nervous system, a difficult conversation with your boss and a predator in the darkness trigger nearly identical stress responses. You were built for survival in a world that no longer exists. And that ancient wiring is making your modern problems feel catastrophic. Think about the last argument that consumed you completely. The one you replayed for days. The one you rehearsed comebacks for at 2 a.m. The one that felt, in the moment, like the most important thing happening anywhere on Earth. Whereas that argument now, gone, dissolved into the irrelevance it always was. But while it was happening, it was everything. That gap between how large something feels and how large it actually is where most of your suffering lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus have time already swallowed up?" He was reminding himself that even the greatest minds in human history, people whose ideas shaped civilization, are now dust. Their crises, their arguments, their moments of shame and triumph, all equally erased by time. Not to make life feel meaningless, but to make the weight of it feel proportional. Because when you truly grasp the scale of existence, when you feel in your body how briefly you are here and how vast everything else is, something extraordinary happens. The small things stop feeling large. And here's the part that surprised me most when I started practicing this. It doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you selective. When you zoom out far enough to see your life clearly, you stop wasting urgency on things that don't deserve it. And you start reserving your full attention, your full energy, your full presence for the things that actually matter. Your relationships, your health, your work that means something, the people who will remember you when you're gone. The perspective shift doesn't shrink your life, it clarifies it. Here's your practice. The next time you feel a situation escalating inside you, before you react, before you respond, before you send that message or say that thing you can't take back, ask yourself one question. Will this matter in 5 years? Not 5 decades. Not from the perspective of the universe. Just 5 years. If the answer is no, and most of the time it will be, give it exactly the amount of energy it deserves, which is very little. And if the answer is yes, then you'll know you're dealing with something real, something worth your full attention and your best thinking. The view from above doesn't eliminate problems, it sorts them. And a person who knows which problems deserve their energy and which ones don't has an extraordinary advantage over everyone around them who is treating every minor friction like a 5-alarm emergency. Next, we get into the principle that most people intellectually agree with, but almost nobody actually practices. The one that requires you to do something your comfort-addicted brain will resist with everything it has. Choosing difficulty on purpose, before life chooses it for you. Here's an uncomfortable truth about the life you're living right now. If you have never voluntarily chosen difficulty, then difficulty is choosing you every single day, without your permission. And that makes you manipulable in ways you haven't even noticed yet. Think about what controls your decisions on any given day. The desire to stay warm, to stay fed, to stay comfortable, to avoid embarrassment, to maintain the lifestyle you've built around you like a wall of protection. Now think about how many times those desires have made you say yes when you meant no. Stay silent when you should have spoken. Tolerate something damaging because disrupting it felt too uncomfortable. Your comfort isn't just a preference, it's a leash. And someone, your employer, your relationships, your own fear, is holding the other end. Seneca practiced what he called voluntary poverty. Periodically, not permanently, he would live as if he had lost everything. Simple food, minimal shelter, no luxuries. Not because he was punishing himself, but to answer one critical question that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Could I survive without this? And every time the answer came back yes, his fear of losing it shrank. His dependency on it loosened. His decisions became freer. Because you cannot be threatened with the loss of something you've already proven you can live without. We live in a culture that has engineered the complete elimination of discomfort. Same-day delivery, climate-controlled everything, entertainment available at every waking moment, food that requires zero effort to obtain. None of this is inherently wrong, but here's what it quietly does to you over time. It makes you soft in ways that only reveal themselves under pressure. It trains your nervous system to treat minor inconvenience as genuine crisis. It creates a life so padded with comfort that the first real friction, job loss, health scare, relationship breakdown, hits you with a force you were never prepared for, because you were never trained for it. Because training requires discomfort, and you've been avoiding discomfort your entire life. I started my own voluntary discomfort practice 3 years ago. Cold showers every morning, 1 day a week eating only the simplest food, periodic days of complete digital silence, monthly periods of deliberate physical difficulty. The first week was genuinely miserable. By the second month, something had fundamentally shifted. Not because the cold shower got warmer, it didn't, but because my relationship to discomfort changed. What had felt threatening started feeling manageable. What had felt unbearable started feeling temporary. And temporary discomfort, once you know it's temporary, loses most of its power over you. Here's the deeper principle beneath the practice. Fear of discomfort is almost always worse than the discomfort itself. The anticipation of difficulty costs more mental energy than the difficulty actually demands. You've been paying a tax on experiences you haven't even had yet. A daily psychological toll on things you're afraid might happen. Things you've never actually tested yourself against. Voluntary discomfort is how you stop paying that tax. You walk toward the thing deliberately, on your own terms and controlled doses, and you discover, as every person who has ever done this discovers, that you are far more capable than your comfort-seeking brain was willing to admit. Here's your practice. Choose one form of voluntary discomfort to begin this week. Just one. Cold shower every morning. Skip one meal. Turn your phone off for an entire day. Walk somewhere instead of driving. Say the honest thing in a conversation where you'd normally stay silent. Start small. The size doesn't matter. The direction does. You are training your nervous system to stop treating difficulty as danger. You are proving to your subconscious, through action, not words, that you can handle more than you've been allowing yourself to handle. And once you know that, once you've felt that in your body and not just understood it in your head, the leash loosens, the manipulation loses its grip, the threats lose their teeth. Because the most powerful thing a human being can say to themselves, to the world, to anyone trying to control them through the threat of discomfort, is simply this: I've already been there, and I was fine. Next, we move to the principle that completely reframes how you see every single obstacle, setback, and failure in your life. Not as evidence of your limitations, as the very mechanism of your growth. Let me tell you something that will completely change how you see failure. The thing blocking your path forward is your path forward. Not a detour around it. Not something to endure until things get easier. The obstacle itself is the way. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't being poetic. He was describing a mechanism, a literal process by which difficulty, when met with the right response, generates exactly the strength and clarity needed to overcome it. Think about every significant capability you currently possess, every skill, every piece of hard-won wisdom, every area where you can genuinely say, "I know how to handle this." Now trace it back. Where did it come from? Not from the easy seasons, not from the comfortable stretches where everything went according to plan. It came from the thing that went wrong, the failure that forced a new approach, the loss that demanded a deeper strength, the rejection that redirected your energy towards something better. Your obstacles didn't interrupt your development. They were your development. You just couldn't see it clearly while it was happening. Here's what separates people who are destroyed by setbacks from people who are built by them. It isn't resilience in the motivational poster sense. It isn't positivity. It isn't telling yourself everything happens for a reason. It's a single, deliberate question asked in the middle of the difficulty. What is this forcing me to become? Not why is this happening to me? Not when will this end? Not how do I get back to where I was before this? What is this forcing me to become? Because that question, asked honestly, answered honestly, transforms your relationship to the obstacle entirely. You stop being its victim, you become its student. And students extract value from every lesson, even the brutal ones, especially the brutal ones. I've watched people face identical setbacks and produce completely different outcomes. Same job loss, same relationship ending, same health crisis. One person collapses into the story of what was taken from them. The other asks what they're now being forced to build. The difference in their lives 5 years later is staggering. Here's your practice. Write down the biggest obstacle you're currently facing, the one that feels most like a wall. Then answer this. If this obstacle is actually a teacher, what specific lesson is it trying to force into me right now? One honest answer, written down today. Because the moment you name the lesson, you've already begun to extract the value. And an obstacle you're extracting value from has already lost half its power over you. Next, the principle that addresses the one enemy nobody talks about. The one that doesn't come from outside you. The one living rent-free inside your own head. And the ancient Stoic weapon designed to silence it permanently. I want you to consider something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You are going to die. Not eventually, not abstractly. You, specifically, will one day take a final breath. Think a final thought. And everything you've been anxious about, everything you've been postponing, everything you've been too afraid to attempt, will become permanently irrelevant. Now, before you dismiss this as morbid, stay with me, because this is not a depressing thought. It is the most liberating thought available to a human being. The Stoics practiced what they called memento mori. Remember that you will die, not as a source of fear, as a daily calibration tool that instantly cuts through every layer of superficial nonsense cluttering your life. Think about the things stealing your mental energy right now. The opinion of someone who probably thinks about you far less than you imagine. The social media argument that felt urgent yesterday. and will be forgotten by next week. The status purchase you're considering to impress people you don't even particularly like. Now run each of those through this single filter. Does this matter given that my time here is finite? The answer, almost every time, is no. And that no is not resignation. It's clarity. The kind of clarity that takes most people decades to develop. And that Memento Mori delivers in seconds. Here's what I noticed when I started beginning each day with this awareness. Not dwelling on death, just acknowledging it. 30 seconds of honest recognition that today is one of a limited number of days I've been given. My priorities reorganized themselves without effort. Things I had been procrastinating on, conversations I needed to have, work that actually mattered, time with people I loved, suddenly felt genuinely urgent. And things I had been treating as urgent, the minor frictions, the petty grievances, the performance for an invisible audience, suddenly felt exactly as small as they actually were. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." That sentence should rearrange something inside you, because the real tragedy isn't dying. The real tragedy is spending the time between now and then on things that don't deserve it. Every person currently making your life difficult, your time here is the same as theirs. Finite, unrepeatable, quietly ticking down with every breath. The drama they're pulling you into will not matter. The grudge you're holding will not matter. The version of yourself you're performing for other people's approval will not matter. What will matter is whether you actually showed up for your own life while you had the chance. Here's your practice. Every morning before the day begins, before the noise, before the demands, before the world starts pulling at you, take 30 seconds. Just 30. And say this to yourself. This day will not come again. I will not waste it on what doesn't deserve me. That's it. 30 seconds. Every morning. Watch what it does to your priorities over 30 days. Watch the things that used to consume you begin to shrink. Watch the things that actually matter begin to clarify. Memento Mori isn't about death. It's about finally, fully choosing to live. One principle left, the one that ties all six together into something unbreakable. The principle that turns everything we've covered from philosophy into armor. Here's the final principle, and it's the one most people least expect. After 6 principles about inner strength, self-mastery, and independence, this one asks you to look outward. Not for validation, not for approval, for something far more profound than either. The Stoics believed in a concept called SYMPATHEIA, the idea that everything in existence is interconnected, that every human being, regardless of status, background, or belief, is part of a single, unified whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We are all working together toward one end," and he meant it literally, not as a feel-good sentiment, as a structural truth about the nature of reality. But here's where this principle becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Because if everything is connected, then every person who has ever hurt you, frustrated you, or made your life difficult is also part of that whole. Think about the person in your life who drains you most, the one whose behavior seems deliberately designed to make things harder, the one you've built walls against, the one whose name alone creates tension in your body. Now consider this. That person is operating from the exact same fundamental place you are. Fear, unmet needs, unexamined wounds, a nervous system trying to navigate a world that never came with instructions. They are not your enemy. They are your mirror. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. The Stoics were never passive in the face of genuine harm, but it means something powerful about where you direct your energy. Anger toward another person is always energy borrowed from your own peace. And you've already learned in this video how finite and precious that peace is. Sympathia asks you to stop seeing other people as obstacles to your happiness and start seeing them as fellow travelers through the same fundamentally difficult human experience. Here's what this principle unlocks practically. When you genuinely internalize that you are part of something larger than yourself, your problems change scale again. Not in the zooming out way of Principle 3. In a different way. They become less personal. The slight that felt targeted, the rejection that felt like a verdict on your worth, the failure that felt like evidence of your inadequacy. None of it was ever actually about you. Everyone is too consumed with their own survival to be as focused on yours as your ego assumes. And from that realization comes something unexpected. Compassion. Not as a weakness, but as a form of strength. The ability to engage with difficult people and difficult situations without being contaminated by them. To remain clear and grounded while everything around you is reactive and chaotic. Marcus Aurelius dealt with senators who despised him, generals who betrayed him, a co-emperor who undermined him at every turn. And yet his private journals, written for nobody but himself, are filled not with bitterness but with genuine attempts to understand. To see these people as human, flawed, struggling, doing what their nature and their wounds compelled them to do. That wasn't naivety. That was the most sophisticated form of self-protection available. Because a person who can remain compassionate under pressure, who can see clearly without being consumed, cannot be destabilized by the people around them. Their peace is internal, and internal peace has no external off switch. Here's your practice. Think of one person in your life who consistently triggers a strong negative reaction in you. Don't justify their behavior. Don't excuse it. Just ask one question. What wound in this person is producing this behavior? You don't need to answer it perfectly. You don't need to share it with them. Just hold the question long enough to create a millimeter of space between their behavior and your reaction. That millimeter is where your freedom lives. Because the person who can maintain their humanity toward difficult people, who can stay connected to sympathia even when everything in them wants to contract and retaliate, that person has mastered the final and most demanding form of Stoic strength. Not the strength to endure hardship, not the strength to control yourself under pressure, the strength to remain fully, genuinely human in a world that constantly gives you reasons not to be. That is SympathEia, and that is the 7th principle. Now let's bring all 7 together. 7 principles, 1 outcome, a version of you that nothing outside can permanently break. You now know what to control and what to release. You know how to love what life throws at you instead of fighting it. You know how to shrink your problems by expanding your perspective. You know how to choose difficulty before it chooses you. You know how to extract value from every obstacle. You know how to let mortality clarify what actually matters. And you know how to stay human, even when the world gives you every reason not to. None of this is theoretical. Every single principle was tested, not in a lecture hall or a therapy office, but in slavery, in war, in plague, in betrayal, in a kind of loss most of us will never face. And it worked. Not because these men were extraordinary, because the principles are. The world will keep testing you. The storms will keep coming. The people, the setbacks, the failures, the moments that feel like they might finally break you. Let them come. Because you are no longer a leaf at the mercy of the wind. You are the rock the waves break against. And rocks, forged under enough pressure, never break. They just get stronger.